In days gone by, not all of the passengers on this cruise were as willing or as enthusiastic about the destination of their journey as the group of tourists we have on board today. We're approaching the famous prison island of Alcatraz, where we'll be serving a sentence of several hours, or even longer if we miss the last return boat. The Alcatraz lighthouse is a prominent feature on the headland of the island, which was the site of the first operational lighthouse on the west coast of the United States.
So we got about 300 people getting off the boat. It'll take a few moments. So I'm going to make up some things here and tell you some stories while we're waiting for everyone to get offloaded. Beautiful day. We don't get weather like this very often in San Francisco. Everyone comes from the East Coast or from the Midwest where I grew up and they go, oh, California. No, not in San Francisco. Tends to be cold and foggy in the summer and tends to be cold and rainy in the winter. And then sometimes in the spring and the fall, we get days like this. It is a working fire truck, but we like to play with it. John, can you do us a little siren? Diamond T was a big company back in the day, sort of like Mack Trucks, but then a different company actually put the fire truck parts onto the vehicle. It'll be parked over here all day. You can take pictures by it.
After hearing about some of the history of the island and its prisoners, we head off to explore the many buildings. It is evident from the amount of activity that the National Park Service is doing a great deal of maintenance and renewal works on the island. The island is nicknamed the Rock, and it is easy to understand why once you start to walk around, or perhaps I should say up and down, as you visit the different areas. Originally, Alcatraz was the site of an army fortress defending the entrance to San Francisco Bay during the California Gold Rush. After this, the island was used to house military prisoners, and these were used to build a new prison on the island between 1909 and 1911. In 1933, the island was handed over to the US Department of Justice for use as a maximum security penitentiary. Although Alcatraz had a capacity of over 330 inmates, the average population was around 270. Several well-known criminals such as Al Capone were interred on Alcatraz, but the majority of prisoners were transferred there due to their refusal to obey the rules or because of violent behaviour. This lighthouse replaced the original Alcatraz lighthouse, which was destroyed by the Great Earthquake in 1906. We are taking the self-guided tour through the cell blocks with the aid of the audio recordings featuring the voices of prison officers as well as inmates. These provide a fascinating insight into the life and conditions experienced during the operation of the prison. Life at Alcatraz was highly structured, monotonous and routine, being designed to teach inmates to follow rules and regulations. The cells look basic, although some prisoners consider the living arrangements of one prisoner per cell to be better than other prisons. Several actually requested to be transferred to Alcatraz. The contents of the cells of several prisoners have been preserved to illustrate the activities they undertook while in prison, and as can be seen, many were quite talented. At Alcatraz, a prisoner had only 4 basic rights, which were food, clothing, shelter and medical care. Anything else was a privilege which had to be earned by obeying the rules and exhibiting good behaviour. Once a prisoner had demonstrated that they could obey the strict rules and were observed to be generally compliant for a period of 5 or so years, they were usually transferred out to another prison. In the 19 years of operation between 1934 and 1963, there were 14 separate escape attempts involving 36 inmates. In one elaborate attempt, 3 inmates dug out the vents in the rear walls of their cells and made their way into a utility space and climbed pipes up onto the roof. From there they climbed down a drain pipe and made their way to the water on the northeast side of the island. Although an unidentified body was located up the coast from San Francisco, no trace of the men was ever found. Officially, no one successfully escaped from Alcatraz, although the records list 5 prisoners who remain missing. Alcatraz closed as a prison on March 21, 1963, because it was too expensive to continue operating. It turned out that it was nearly 3 times more expensive to operate than any other federal prison. Ironically, the major reason for the island being so expensive to operate was its isolation, as all supplies including water had to be brought in by boat at considerable cost. After its closure, the island was virtually abandoned until 1969, when a group of Native Americans took it over with the hope of establishing a cultural centre and an educational complex on the island. Supporters from a wide cross-section of the community came to join the occupation of the island over an 18-month period, but during this time much damage occurred, including fires which destroyed several buildings. The remaining Native Americans were removed from the island by federal marshals in 1971. The island's lookout provides excellent panoramic views of San Francisco, which is a little more than a mile away across the bay. In 1972, the Golden Gate National Recreation Area, including the island of Alcatraz, was created, and the island now receives about 1 million visitors from around the world each year.